I'm 19. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I do have Barth. This is our 9th conference since 2000. All right, well, since everybody's been labeling us as a team, this is my first team. The people who were there for me when we didn't even know what Barth was. That's my mom, dad, grandma, and sister, and me on the very end. This was at the very first conference. That's me with Dr. Barth. And up in the top is the first, I guess you could say the first team that was established with Barth. Afterwards, Barth syndrome was like first formed at the first conference, and we started having like workshops like we do here, like the clinics and stuff. And everybody just started meeting everybody, and we just started having great relationships with everybody. And these next few slides are just slides of everybody over the conferences over the years. These are some of the doctors that have been involved with the treatments and stuff. And we've just been so lucky to have a great team of doctors that help us with everything that they can. And this is just some boys contributing to research to help find a cure and stuff. And this is how just Team Barth has grown over the years. And we've just gotten bigger every year. All right, and now I'll introduce my mom so she can introduce the speakers and stuff.
Okay, great job, Ben. So basically, this last slide, what our point is we started out really small. The first conference, we only had a few boys that came. That first picture actually is of the Barth guys and Dr. Barth, Dr. Kelly, some of the first scientists that were formed really our first team. And like Ben said, we've attended every one of the conferences. This is our 9th conference. We've been very proud to see our teams grow through the years. I tried to go back, and I know I have final photos of the group at the end of every conference, but unfortunately I'm not as organized and couldn't find all the photos. These are the ones that we came up with. Donna and I tried to find some more last night, but anyway, as you can see, we've grown, and going back to the research, all of our guys, I know they've moaned and groaned and had all these tests done over the years, and have given their blood, and even some of our boys like that have passed, unfortunately, they are still contributing to the research through their blood and tissue donations. And I think that is our team logo now, Team Barth. We need everyone to participate and just become part of our team. And today we've got new families in the room, and we just want to encourage you to please join us, be a part of our team, Barth. And we're going to add a big photo at the end of this conference to this slideshow presentation. So, Team Barth, that's what we're all about. So we're going to kick off our family sessions this morning, and we've been very blessed to have a lot of scientists and researchers, and this morning we've got Dr. Elizabeth Perkins that's going to be speaking first. We're very fortunate to have her with us. Dr. Perkins has an associate and a director of research assistant professor at Florida Center for Inclusive Communities, Department of Child and Family Studies, College of Behavioral and Community Sciences at the University of Florida in Tampa. Dr. Perkins' current work includes educating future health professionals in development of advocacy documents such as the popular My Health Passport. She has published some very in some prestigious journals, and as well has co-authored a textbook for aging. Dr. Perkins also co-edited a special issue on aging and end of life for the American Journal of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. She's going to be speaking today about the rewards of risk-taking. And she and I spoke a little bit ago. Dr. Perkins has her own disability, and that's kind of what got her started with her career. She is a nurse, and she was one of the first nurses that has worked with only one arm. She has missing one limb, so she has herself had to adapt and learn how to work with disabilities, and has a very successful career. And I think her getting up here and speaking and letting our boys and young men see that your dreams can come true and you can have careers and you can push forward even with a disability. So she's going to be speaking to us about taking risk and doing things that you may not think that you can do, and we're just very glad to have you to speak this morning.
Thank you.
So let's welcome Dr. Perkins.
Indeed, it is my pleasure to be here today. I've had some connection with the Bath syndrome because of the wonderful Shelley Bowen. But is Shelley in here today? Nope, she might be next door. And who asked me to do my research area is predominantly aging issues. I won't hide that fact. That's what my PhD in gerontology is about. But also the fact that I do a lot of research about caregivers and family caregivers and sort of the stresses and coping with long-term caregiving issues. And I actually did a webinar for the Bath Syndrome Association about 2-3 years ago, I think it was now. And one of the things that I think sort of struck when Shelley and I was having some dialogue was that there's some very things that appear in sort of both these worlds, that the people, the children with significant healthcare conditions and children with disabilities in the disability field. And so I'm coming from that background about what we can talk about that's aligned really with the disability field. So I'm just going to, this is sort of just to try and get you thinking a little bit more about, about the issues of risk-taking and what that means, and what are the barriers, what can we do about that, and a lot of it is self-perception. So I'll talk a little bit about my story as we go along. But I am from the Florida Center for Inclusive Communities. That is a university center for excellence in developmental disabilities. And so we do research across the lifespan. So I'm actually very happy to be peripherally involved now with a population that was being introduced to me, and I'm really fantastically impressed with everything that I see and this organization and this conference for something that is very rare, and for you to be able to come together in this manner. I think it's wonderful. So, words of wisdom from people with disabilities. Anybody heard of Dr. Temple Grandin in this room? Couple people, yeah. She's probably one of the most famous people alive with autism spectrum disorder. And autism spectrum disorder is a disability in which people have difficulties with communication and social interaction. And she puts it, in terms of how she perceives herself, she's different, but she's not less. And Stephen Hawking, I think a few people might have heard of Stephen Hawking. Wonderful quote here: "It's a waste of time to be angry about my disability. One has to get on with life, and I haven't done badly, says, a masterful mind. But just think about his mind and the fact that, 100 years ago, his mind would have been locked away and we would never have known had it not been for the advances in technology and supports, and able to make him still able to communicate all those thoughts that he has and his incredible mind and how he can perceive things. And I think this is a fun one. This is Aaron Wheels Fotheringham. He was the first person who was a wheelchair user that actually did a flip, a somersault, a complete somersault. And he was born with spina bifida. And he said, honestly, when he thinks about his life as a wheelchair user, there's just wheels stuck to my butt. How can that not be fun? So I think that's a really great way. And he's just one of these extreme sports persons. He goes on skateboards and all sorts of stuff. And it's amazing to sort of see like how the perception of a person who uses a wheelchair, and people say, like, confined to a wheelchair. And many people who use a wheelchair will say, no, it liberates us. It gives us the opportunity to have independence in the way that we interact with the world. Again, perception. And we're very strong about how we use people-first language. So we don't like the terms like the disabled. It's a person, people first, a person with a disability, confined to a wheelchair or wheelchair-bound. It's a wheelchair user, a person who uses a wheelchair. Who's affected with baths. Perhaps that should be, a person has baths. We say that about people with autism or with dementia. It's a reality. It's affected. I think if we think about it in terms of, that's the reality, this person has this issue or this disability or this health condition. So, again, not that it's person-first language, and it's really important how we use language because it really shapes our perceptions. People first. The attribute or the primary description or the health condition should never be the first description of a person. Do we all agree? Oh, come on, we need to agree a bit more than that. I know, it's after breakfast. So fundamental rights, our vision statement, it's meant for people with developmental disabilities, but we look at this, we say, all individuals with developmental disabilities will have the freedom, responsibility, authority to live self-determined lives. But really that applies to every one of us. You take out that developmental disabilities, all individuals really should have freedom, responsibility, authority and support to live self-determined lives. And that notion of self-determination is very important for people in the disability field, where we've often had lowered expectations on what our capabilities might be. One part of that issue is if you have self-determined lives and you're able to live the life and pursue the quality of life that you want, it makes the whole social inclusion process so much better. So we have full participation in life in all the aspects that means, whether it's political representation, whether it's retail, meaningful relationships, restaurants, going to college, all those things. It's very important. And these are things that we've really had to strive for people with disabilities. And it makes no difference what that issue might be, is that there's always ways and means in which we can support people to fully participate in the community, to fully participate in life. And yes, there might be adaptations, there might be accommodations, there might be extra supports needed, but really our only sort of barrier is our lack of creativity for that to happen. So some of the guiding philosophies in our field is dignity and respect. Respect fosters equality. We don't like pity parties. We don't like people that says that it comes from a place where you're deriving a judgment about a person's life and their abilities or their capabilities. So I'm a big fan of Cartman. I think if I'd have had a children, it would be Eric Cartman. So has anybody ever heard Eric Cartman sing? Is there anything more beautiful than when Eric Cartman sings? Yes. I just think he has a very good voice. So we, that's why a little tongue-in-cheek, I respect my authority, which he says a lot. But it is important about that notion of dignity and respect. Another is choices, and having choices, and the right to make choices and to have options. Again, particularly in the disability field, we've had a sort of many, many years where that wasn't the case, where choices were made for people routinely, and again, that notion of self-determination. And really, sort of when I was talking to Shelley, this notion of dignity of risk that she really liked is one of these philosophies from the disability field. And that is about really having the chances to take risks. Who in this room has done something right first time? How do you learn? How do you grow? You grow from taking risks, from doing something that pushes you outside your comfort zone a little bit. But then there's the rewards that comes with that. And that's the issue. If we deny people the chances to learn and to take certain risks, how do we know what the level of their achievement might be? And one of the things that's been really emerging in the disability field is about employment issues and how people with disabilities, with the most significant disabilities, can be employed. And again, it comes down to that wanting some autonomy, wanting economic freedom, and to be able to save for the future, to be able to have different things that what gives us meaning to get up every morning and have a job or do something where we're interacting with people. And so it's important. So this whole discovery process is being very much embedded in people with disabilities. That it's important to think about what it is that you like, what are your particular complexities, what are your talents, and how can we build on that capacities that you have. It's also environment. Environment is very important. And we see, get to know people in the settings where they are and who they are in those settings. Because people react and are very different depending on the different environments they might find themselves with, and the dynamics of the people that are in those different environments. So it's this discovery about what it is that we like in life, what it is that we want, in all the different areas that we can apply that, whether it's employment, whether it's further education. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. Let's see how we go with time. So it says inauspicious start. When I was born, I was whisked off. It was noted that, I was born without my right arm. And my mother didn't see me for 12 hours. Because the doctors whisked me away and came round. I was born 6 o'clock in the morning, and then 12 hours later, my mum was very worried, of course. She was like, is there something seriously wrong? And wait for the doctor to come round. She said, well, Mrs. Perkins, you have a daughter who has one arm shorter than the other, and left it like that. So here is a thing about precision of description. Because what was that expectation when she saw me? It was like, well, 2 arms there, but one shorter than the other type of thing. So, it was a little bit of a shock to her when she saw me, because it was actually not just a shorter arm, but sort of an absence of arm. But actually, one of the things that she was told, and it was by one of the nurses on the ward, was that let her find her own way of doing things. Don't cuddle her, don't make, give her the chance to learn and grow. And she knew that because she had a relative very similar, who had a similar disability. And so it was nice. So prosthetic arms, every couple of years they'd send me off, get me fitted up. And I used to say to them, I don't want this. I actually, and quite a few congenital amputees will tell you this, that like if they're born without a particular limb, sometimes it's just easier for them to find their own way of doing things. And yet the professionals kept saying, no, you need to have this arm. And they say, wasted quite a bit of money in doing so. So, it was good entertainment value, I have to say. As a 5-year-old in class going in with Captain Hook, it was terrifying to most other people. Actually, and this is a really bad story, but my sisters, I have 2 older sisters, and yes, I was the bane of their life. So I used to have a hand that was functional with the hook, and then I used to have one that was sort of a cosmetic one. And I used to think it was sort of funny when they used to bring their boyfriends over to run up into the toilet and detach the hand or have the arm coming out the toilet or something, and go, there's something wrong here. So, but apart from that, that was the only real use that I had for the artificial arm. And so, again, it's that sort of notion of what's right for me and what wasn't right for me. And one of the things that I did was that I wanted. Can you still hear me? I think yep. Okay. One of the things that I had a real desire was to help other people. And so when I applied for my nurse training, the first place I went to, the person interviewed me and he said, "Well, how did you get dressed this morning?" And it's like, really? Yeah. And I'm going to be retiring soon, and I'm not comfortable with taking a risk and with having you start your training and then finding that you can't do things. Okay, I said, okay. So he took me to the next person who's the occupational health nurse, and he said, well, I can see problems right away. You're not going to be able to do CPR. You're not going to have to do this. You're not going to do that. I got my CPR within my first 6 weeks of training when I did start my nurse training, but by the by. And what this basically meant was that they just sort of shut me down right from the get-go. And what I really liked about the training that I did do, and which brought me into the disability field, ironically enough, because this training was for a registered nurse in learning disabilities. So this was training was specifically to help and assist and nurse people with significant disabilities. So I applied for that training, and they said, well, we don't know, this is something we've not done before, but how could we promote what we do if we don't see if we can support you in this endeavour? And I had worked in nursing homes for a couple of years prior to that, so it wasn't like I was going sort of totally fresh-faced into sort of the nursing arena. And so that was a very, very different attitude. And again, took that dignity of risk with me, took that, of being able to do something that was really not open to discussion for many people. And I became one of the first nurses with this disability to be a registered nurse in the UK. And so, again, the issue for me is that that's a constant struggle, though, because people will always see a particular disability and they'll make assumptions. And so it is a constant learning process with other people and teaching process, but it's able to do things that I can make sure that the other people can benefit from. So, yes, here's me with the royal family. It's and one of the things, yes, I know it's a really bad picture, but Madame Tussauds is great, isn't it? But me and Harry were having a bit of a giggle, to be honest. So, but this is it. It's sometimes we try and conform, but sometimes it's good to stand out. It's good to sort of be proud of who you are and the capabilities that you have, or again some of the challenges that you have, because those capabilities, those challenges make you, and it's really important. For me, it's great to have role models, and I think it's wonderful with this conference that you have some fabulous boys, first one, come up, that will talk about their life and their challenges, and to be role models to others. I think that's really important. For me, in the UK, anybody been to, well, we got some folks from the UK. Who's from the UK here? Okay. Yes, brothers and sisters. She's saying she doesn't sound like she's from Florida, does she? So yeah, having Admiral Lord Nelson on top of Nelson's column, he wasn't pensioned off when he lost his arm, and he was blinded in his right eye as well. And anybody remember the old hairband Def Leppard? Raise your hand, please. Well, that's a few more than my students do now. I'm having to change these slides a little bit because I'm like, who's that? So, yeah, I'm showing my age now. Rick Allen, who, you think about a drummer who loses his dominant arm in a traffic accident. And what happened? He completely, he embraced that change. He learned how to play drums with an adapted kit. And his group supported him to do that. Again, it's good to learn from other people with similar challenges because it can inspire you to say, well, yeah, I could do that. I haven't thought about doing that. So that the storytelling and sharing stories is extremely important. And challenges are there. I think if we didn't have challenges, life would be, pretty mediocre. I think that's what makes life exciting. And also, it's not just challenges that we have from our environment, challenges that we have from our circumstances, but also our own beliefs. We have to challenge our own beliefs of what is possible, because I certainly, not only challenge our beliefs, but defend our beliefs. For my example, for nursing, one of the things was that we had, several people saying to me, that's not going to happen, that's not going to happen, that's not going to happen. And so it sort of steeled me up a little bit, thinking, okay, knock me down, but okay, I can get back up. Let's see what we can do about this. So your abilities, other people's expectations. And so it's not just a case of recognizing and challenging those beliefs, but being a staunch advocate for them. And a lot of the work that we do is about advocacy because we do have to change people's minds. And so also, that leads, when you have good stories to tell, to embrace opportunities, to lead and empower others. And that's when it's important when you have these meetings that you make those connections and you have those discussions and those things that can evolve from the power of a group as opposed to the power of an individual. In the disability world, we're very, very staunch supporters of the adage, nothing about us without us, and how important that is when we think about how we support individuals with different challenges. So one of the things that we think about is the what I call the can't do cycle. And one of the things is it's really from some negative beliefs and those perceptions of those negative beliefs. We have lowered expectations, which happens. And then if you lower the expectations of what people can do or can achieve, you find that those opportunities are either denied or removed, never presented. And a few years ago in nursing, before I came here, one of the things that we started to look at was something called opportunity planning. Because most of the issues in residential care was like giving people different opportunities. You've got sort of very structured schedules that can occur in residential settings. It's like, well, what if that was a little bit more, open to different opportunities to do other things, not just sort of like get up, have a meal, wait around a little bit, watch a bit of TV, have another meal, have a drink, have another meal. It was all sort of bound on these very, very strict timetables. And it's really important to think about these opportunities. So I like to do, what about the can do? Well, that is when you have these hopes, you have beliefs that you can do things, that you raise expectations. Nobody ever really does anything if they have lowered expectations of themselves. You have to raise the expectations and promote those opportunities to engage and to be able to do things that creates change and empowers us. So we have our own challenges, but we also have barriers, and there are barriers out there. Who's creating those barriers? And what's feeding that creation of that barrier? Is it fear? Is it apprehension? Is it the fear of different things that it's not really, when we sit down and discuss, is not really a great thing to overcome that can be supported in other ways. Who's sustaining them? And again, when people have very entrenched ideas, the inertia to change, to do things differently, is problematic. How can they be overcome? So there's some barriers that are self-created, and there's some barriers that are there or placed there by the environment, by other people, and it is important to think about who might be creating those barriers and how we can challenge those. Preconceived expectations. Now, people with Down syndrome, 20, 30, 40 years ago, were routinely institutionalized, living in large institutions. And if you think about the people of that time compared to how people with Down syndrome are living their lives now and the things that they're achieving, very, very different. We wouldn't have thought of anybody, when we think about people with Down syndrome years ago, being able to drive. And this is John. He passed his driving test at the first attempt. And the quote is, actually, I hate to say it, it's from his pediatrician, who said to his mom, "Take him home, sit him in the corner, and give him a paper sack to play with, as he would never use toys." Again, expectations, lowered expectations. There are people with Down syndrome now that are doing things that we would never have even dreamt of. That they've climbed to the base camp of Everest. They're now doing university degrees. I know somebody in South Florida that's learned American Sign Language and teaches American Sign Language to other people. There's people with Down syndrome that have recently appeared at New York as a model on the New York Fashion Week. Has anybody see that? Yeah, we see people. It was wonderful. It was a fabulous model. And that model, actually, it was an interesting story. She actually was 40 pounds heavier. And she said, I want a model. And she went into a very big fitness campaign. And just an amazing story of her fortitude to be accepted and raise awareness. So this, instead of giving the reasons of why you can't do things, think about the reasons of why you can and how you could. Because those can'ts into cans and dreams into plans. And that's a big part of it. You can't just have the dream without having a plan or plan of action and set some goals and set how we can get from A to B. This is a new sign that we see in the disability world now, because people perceive people with disability as not being active, and even people who will get wheelchair users. Now, as you know, as Aaron Wheels Fotheringham, he can do fantastic things. But it's a perception of inactivity versus activity. And so this is the new logo that's now replacing for disabled parking spaces and all sorts of areas where they're designating that. I do want to read out, and because the first time I read this, I think this says it much better than what I can. And this is a quote, a passage from Michael Bowen. "Fear is not my option. I am a mortal human being. I have no special powers to live forever. From the moment we take our first breath, cells begin to die. I have a rare disorder called Barth syndrome. I refuse to let the time life-threatening define me. The worst thing that could happen to anyone is going to happen to everyone. I choose not to waste my life by living in fear, but moreover, to be fearless. Fear paralyzes where courage sets us free. It is not my choice about when the first and last breaths occur, but it is up to me to define how I live my life, with every breath between. Therefore, I refuse to allow fear to define how I live my life." Michael Bowen, who maximized life's potential to the fullest. How many of me? So, I've sort of gone in a very arc circular here to get to the point that I want to make about the rewards of risk-taking. So it does, to recap, to open you to new challenges and opportunities. Taking risks empowers you to establish new limits in your mind, to be more creative, and a better problem solver. And that is something that's actually quite fun, the fun part. That's a fun part of my work is like, okay, we have this challenge that we want to do. How are we going to get there? It helps people become a better problem solver and be creative. Taking risks can result in a positive outcome. It can help you clearly define what you really want out of life. And it builds self-confidence. Oh, and I'm going to do a tap dance too. And Mark Zuckerberg, we all know that guy, don't we? The Facebook guy. Biggest risk is not taking any risk. And I think that's an important thing. And I just want to come to a story of my nephew Joe. Joe has autism. And when Joe was younger, there were a time where we thought life would be very, very challenging for him. He used to get very aggressive, there'd be holes punched in the walls, and he would be very, very difficult in how he could express himself. So he has this disability that makes social interaction very difficult. He gets very confined in some of the activities that he wants to do. And also the difficulty he has with trying new things. And that is a difficulty for a lot of people with autism because they like routine, they like the sameness. And so, again, this whole notion of risk is very pertinent. So he is now a young man who's in his 20s. He lives independently. He actually got his own flat, and he has some support with that, before his brother and sister left my sister's home. So he actually became independently living before his older brother and sister. This is my great-nephew Jacob and Joe in the middle. And he now goes to a vocational college. He loves being in the outdoors. He loves being around animals. He loves gardening and landscaping. And so that's what he's doing nowadays. To think that Joe would be going to have a group of friends, going to the cinema, going to the mall, doing all this independently was unheard of. When he first said, I want to learn to ride the bus, which again opened up all the possibilities for him to live independently and to go to college. So it's a story of, those risks, big or small. At the end of it, it is your call. It is what you want to do with your life and the challenges and the risks that you want to take and where they might take you. So we are Team Bath. Thank you for having me here today. One of the things that I do want to do, I actually had a title that I did for another presentation called Disability, Neither a Confiner or Definer Be. So I plagiarized myself in the interest of Melania Trump to tell you that I'm going to call this Bath Syndrome, neither a confiner nor a definer be. And I thank you for your time today. I hope this is, I know it's a little bit out of your field with what I do. And I do, if you want the slides, and they haven't, I did about 50, so there might be some of you that don't have slides. And also, I've been told that you have to do an evaluation. If you like me, write nice things. If you don't, my name's Mary Smith. That's an old one. But thank you for your attention, and I hope this helped you sort of think about things in a different way.